Hello, Tuan. I wish you a happy new year. I hope you're doing well, and 2023 will be a great year for you, and that we might eventually keep developing interesting things here in our project. After the last session in which you corrected some of the errors that we had on the model, some of them still remain. And I want to point them out through this video so you can go one by one, taking a look at what's still missing from the previous version. Okay, let's go for number 1 now. So the first one here is number 8 from the errors tab. This is working partially. This is related to the naming of outputs and the removal of outputs. So if I were to go here to any one of the outputs, the previously defined ones, for example, as you can see here, let's say this one, as you can see, that exists as an output. I want to remove it individually. So I go on top of that one, go to output, remove output. I select it from here and remove it. Okay, and correctly, as we can see now, it has been removed from the list and the background color has been removed as well. The problem goes if I were to remove all of them just by clicking over here. I remove them all. And as you can see, the background color still remains for all of them. So it's working if I can do it individually, but it is not working if I do it for the whole range. As you can see, outputs have been removed, but the background color has not been removed. So the next one is number 9. The number 9 is these two different buttons. The copy paste button, which should be renamed as recalculation mode, and the distribution charts button seem to be working together, and they should be working independently. Let me explain that. If I were to go here to any one of these, the recalculation mode, once again, this button should be renamed, not as copy paste, but as recalculation mode. Now it's on. So as you can see, if I were to go to the next cell, the numbers change. The recalculation mode is on. If I were to go and turn on distribution charts at this point and enable them, so I now have both things, recalculation mode on and charts are enabled. However, if I were to turn now copy paste off here, recalculation off, and as you can see now it also becomes distribution charts, since they are somehow dependent from each other, become enabled. Let's disable them here. And if I were to go now to copy paste and enable it, as you can see, with the distribution charts, it becomes, the two get together interlinkedly. They become dependent from one the other. Not only does the recalculation mode turn on, but also distribution charts also are on. If I were to turn this off here, distribution charts also turn off. They need to work independently from one another. In other words, the 4 combinations should be possible. Distribution charts on or off, and recalculation mode on or off. The third one is number 10. It's a login problem. It is not working well yet. In other words, if I were to go here and account, as you can see, I am logged in. If I decide to log out in here, first of all, this window remains in Spanish. It should be turned respectively to English, Spanish, or Portuguese. So that's one error. But the other thing is that it supposedly at this point is logged out, which is not working. I mean, it is still log on, and the customer can, even though it says you need to log in to use the program, if I were to go here to, let's say, model, and let's say view distribution charts. If I were to log in here, okay, let's go to test at IziRisk.com. And this is test 1, 2, 3, 4. It's already logged in. Now I can go and change things here respectively. And if I were to log off here, it remains with the customer login automatically as in here. So please check again the login process because it doesn't seem to be working logically all the time. Thank you. The fourth one is related to error number 11. It's related to the names here for the statistics on the charts, depending on the language. Let's go to the model. Let me place myself on, let's say, this cell. And once I'm on that cell, if I were to turn on distribution charts, remember this is in English at this point. And if I were to go here, distribution charts enabled. As you can see, now I have correct, but this text DESV-S, which is standard deviation, kept its name in Spanish, desviación estándar, which is the name in Spanish of standard deviation. If I were to, let's say, go to Portuguese, to Spanish, so now any one of them, it's correctly desviación estándar, the whole name, as you can see here. It's strange because on the other one, it was just a contraction of DESV-est. And if I were to change this to, let's say, Portuguese, any one of them would remain with desviación estándar. And the name actually correctly is desvio padrão, which is another word here that should be used over here. So in Portuguese, the word is desvio let me spell it correctly here, padrão. This is the correct word in Spanish. So make sure that the standard deviation text on statistics for the charts respectively behave correspondingly in each one of the three languages. Thank you. So the next thing, uncorrected error, is related to number 14, which is related to correlation tornado in Portuguese. If I were to go here to outputs and develop, once this is in Portuguese, let's make sure this is in Portuguese, yes. And now generate the correlation tornado. As you can see, the name here is correct, but then the name here remains in English. So this title over here for the different correlation coefficients should be changed to Portuguese. That's one thing. The other error that we have over here is that if I were to generate, let's say, the histogram, take a look that here the name remains as the same. It should, there's two errors here. First of all, it kept the name from the previously developed chart. It seems as though the title here never changed and kept in memory whatever value it had from before. The title, Total Risk, should be here on top of the chart. And here it should say in English, statistics or simulated statistics, as it has been specified here at this part. So please make sure that that works. Once again, the model, if I were to go to any one of the, let's say, outputs on this one and generate a histogram, for this one, for example, it keeps the previous name and it should be updated. Thank you. So the next one that has problems is error number 15, the sensitivity tornado. There's a couple of things that I corrected myself on that one. If I were to generate the sensitivity tornado, let's make it first of all into English. Okay. So if I were to generate sensitivity tornado, it has already been developed. So I show it here. take a look at this. So there's a couple of things over here. First of all, I corrected some of the functions that were generated here on chart 5. Chart 5 is the one that is being developed here. So if I were to go and unhide all sheets, and then out of that I would go to chart 5. So there's a couple things over here. There were errors on these functions. If I were to have it was originally with a 2, so it gave me a position, and this one also had a 2. It was giving me another position. This was incorrect. So this should be a 3. This should be a 3. In order to look at correctly at sense it at the place of the position, it was giving me row 2 instead of the row that it should be given here correspondingly. So that was one error. The other thing is that, as you can see now, this is working well, but then on the chart part, which is automatically generated, total over here, it's by itself one large bar, and it shouldn't be keeping here, because in this case, by keeping just one bar here, the chart doesn't read well. So if I were to eliminate the very last total here, that's 1, and then here the corresponding dimension of that up to here. Now take a look at the chart. Now the chart correctly eliminates the total and adequately shows the bars in a much better fashion. And that's one thing, because I could not correct that one because it had been generated automatically, and this is related to the fact, I guess, that the software, when generating the sensitivity tornado over here, it's essentially generating this n+2 times instead of n+1 times. Please take a look at that. Thank you. Okay, so now let's go, and on top of a model, let's say that we start with several inputs and several outputs. Let's eliminate the inputs. As you can see, inputs previously have a color, this purple color, whereas outputs have this yellow color. So inputs and outputs. By the way, they should be colored here at the beginning, so you know up front which are the input color and which are the output colors. But that's not that important. The important thing here is that if I were to remove all of them, let's say from start, so that has been removed. Output data, let us remove them all as well. We have already seen in another error that they remained in color and they should be deleted. But if I were to this point, let's say add the inputs from 0, let's say that I select all these, okay? So let's create them as inputs. I select them, the ranges for the names B2 through B21, B2 through B21. Okay, so those are the names. As you can see, now I am using the default color, which is this green, even though, because I haven't selected yet another color. If I were to select these, for example, to this purple, it changes, it's been modified, okay? And now if I were to delete them altogether, remove them, okay, the input color should remain being this purple, okay? If I were to create them again, input data, once again, B2, B21, add them, they are now created correspondingly, and this is correct on their colors. So something of that sort also happens with the outputs. If I were to select these ones as outputs, the names would be B2 through B9. Okay, I add them. As you can see, they keep the original default because I haven't defined anything yet. If I were to redefine that by that, let's say yellow, submit. But as you can see, I had already lost here the previously selected color from inputs, even though it would have been nice to have that color in this background here so the user can notice which is the color it is currently using for its inputs, which now remain green. In other words, the original output, the original default colors, the green for inputs and the blue for outputs, remain even though you want to change them and somehow manage them here from inputs and outputs. Please review that function. Thank you. Finally, the last thing that needs to be reviewed is after a simulation, if I were to go on top of a previously defined input or output and generate a histogram. As you can see, I've got the title here for the chart on the left-hand side, subcontractor bankruptcy, that's correct. But then it repeats here, subcontractor bankruptcy. And it's irrelevant of the language. If I were to change this, let's say to Spanish, and then I cannot update it over here at this point. But then, once again, if I were to reopen that with histogram, I would be getting, once again, this. And the name here should be simulated statistics as it has been pointed out here on this introduction. Simulated statistics, in English, estadísticas simuladas, estatísticas simuladas in Portuguese, respectively, at this point on the upper right-hand side. This is what it should be reading from here. Those are the different things that need to be corrected. Thank you. Tuan, once again, thank you very much for taking a look at the review of these errors that are not somehow correctly performed yet. Please take a look at them and tell me when you can have them ready. By the way, you have a great year and happy to keep working with you. Happy New Year.